The ovary can be divided into three compartments: tunica albuginea, cortex, and medulla. The tunica albuginea is the most superficial part of the ovary, a dense layer of connective tissue which is covered by the germinal epithelium, a layer of simple squamous or cuboidal epithelium. The other portion of the ovary is called the cortex, which is occupied by the developing follicles. The inner portion is called the medulla, which is highly vascular and contains the larger blood vessels and nerves. Both cortex and medulla consist stroma. Ovarian stroma is highly cellular, containing spindle-shaped stromal cells similar to fibroblasts and is composed of reticular fibers and ground substance. All of the ovarian follicular development occur within the cortex of the ovary. At any time, most of the follicles remain in a resting condition. These are called primordial follicles. Primordial follicles consist of a primary oocyte surrounded by a single layer of squamous granulosa cells around the oocyte. In these follicles, the oocytes undergo arrest before the completion of the first stage of meiosis. This arrest lasts until puberty. A few primordial follicles develop into primary follicles. The early primary follicle is encapsulated by a single layer of cuboidal epithelial cells. With continued development, this lining develops stratified cuboidal epithelium. And the primary oocyte grows, and the zona pellucida appears between the oocyte and the granulosa cells. An acellular boundary layer of protoglycans and glycoproteins. A secondary follicle is formed when the layers of granulosa cells separate by the accumulation of the follicular fluid, and a fluid-filled space called the antrum develops within the follicle. The cluster of granulosa cells that remains around the follicle is known as the cumulus ovorus or the egg-carrying hip. Corona radiata cells refer to the part of cumulus cells just next to the ovocyte, closely connected to it, which is in direct contact with the zona pellucida of the ovocyte. The stromal cells that surround the follicle undergo differentiation to form two distinct layers known as the theca interna and the theca externa. The cells of theca interna produce steroids, while the main role of the theca externa is to provide protection. Graafian follicles are defined as matured follicles that are larger than normal. It is the final stage of development for an ovarian follicle before ovulation occurs. A fully mature Graafian follicle ruptures and releases the ovum in the mid of the menstrual cycle. Typically, in each menstrual cycle, just one dominant follicle completes the process of maturation. Other follicles which had begun the process then degenerate, appearing as atretic follicles. After ovulation, the ruptured follicle changes to an endocrine structure called the corpus luteum or yellow body. The cuboidal granulosa cells enlarge and form cords of the granulosa lutein cells around vascular spaces. The cytoplasm of the granulosa lutein cells has numerous empty vacuoles of dissolved lipid contents. Theca interna cells change to the theca lutein cells. If pregnancy does not occur, the corpus luteum regresses, degenerates, and becomes avascular, resulting in a white fibrous scar-like appearance called a corpus albicans. It is a remnant of the ovarian follicle. The cells within the corpus albicans are primarily composed of fibroblasts. Over time, it may shrink and become less visible. In subsequent menstrual cycles, new ovarian follicles will develop, and the process of ovulation will repeat.